What's up, sons? It's Blind Rod with Son of a Tech once again, and today we're going to be going over the basics of plotting a hard drive for Chia, specifically for farming Chia, and how you can get started doing that. But before we get into it, here's a word from our sponsor. Today's sponsor is myself. To support the channel, click the join button down below and you will be able to access our privately hosted Rocket Chat. Selecting the $1.99 option will get you access, and after that you just need to head on over to the membership tab, scroll down and expand out your membership perks and find the section for connecting on social media. In that section there will be a secret registration URL for Rocket Chat where you can sign up and enjoy talking with other cryptocurrency enthusiasts and miners without scammers, spammers, or bots. Welcome back. So if you guys haven't heard of the Chia network yet, definitely go check out my WTF video on it, as well as if you guys are looking for which hardware you should be getting, definitely check out my plotting build that we did earlier this week as well. With all that out of the way, if you just have some spare hard drive space and you want to start farming Chia, this will get you started. What is the ROI for this right now? Currently, technically nothing because it's not listed on any exchange. We are hoping, I guess, here in about 11 days on the 30th that we will be able to start trading Chia for, of course, other currencies, etc. And whenever that happens, we will go ahead and update the calculator with the price of Chia to go ahead and determine what the return on investment for this is. Now, why would you start doing it now? Well, if you're in early and you start farming and you hit a couple blocks, you're going to be way ahead of people if this network does take off. However, it could not do anything and you could not make anything at all. So what are we doing today? We are essentially writing out a bunch of bingo cards onto our hard drives. So what we are going to be trying to do is essentially creating a whole bunch of bingo cards on a whole bunch of hard drives or disk space so that whenever our bingo number comes up to solve a block, we get a reward. That's the best way I can explain what we're doing. How do we do it? Well, that's fairly simple, at least at the base. So for today, we're just going to be going over, simple plotting, give you guys the settings, how it works and functions. You have a Windows option, a Mac OS option, and then there is a Linux option that you can download from their GitHub. I do want to mention that Ubuntu is significantly faster, 10 to 20% faster than Windows. The Mac OS version, being FreeBSD, is also faster than Windows. So if you guys are wanting to be optimal, use different operating systems. However, today we're going to be going over the guide for Windows. The actual application itself functions similarly across all platforms, if not identically across all platforms. Our plotter is currently running Ubuntu, and I have noticed no significant differences between the Windows and the Ubuntu version. But today we're going to go ahead and download the Windows version. You'll just click it and the Chia setup will start to download. At this point, we are going to open the file and it will say start connecting to wallet, and we can allow. Okie doke, so here's the point where you will need to create a new private key. This private key will need to be stored in a safe manner. So whether that is something like an encrypted USB drive, writing it down on a piece of paper, or of course, my final option that I always offer is using something like Nord Locker. None of those options do I get any kickbacks from. That's just the best options that I've found so far. If you need additional details on where to store private keys and the safest ways to do it, let me know in the comment section below. So at this point, it'll say, welcome, the following words are used for your wallet backup. We're going to click next, and it should give us a list of words. Okay, so these will be the words that you want to write down for future use. Basically, you will copy these out, take a picture of it. I would be very careful taking a picture of it, by the way, because then you might have some issues with people being able to grab it from your Google Drive. This is important. You want to keep this as safe as possible wherever you can. For us right now, I am just going to do a quick snipping tool of it because we are using this wallet as an example, and then I'm just going to go ahead and save it. Like I said, I think you should save it to an encrypted drive or encrypted cloud service like Nord Locker, or writing it down. I'm just going to save it as Chia example, and then we're going to click next. At this point, it will ask once again for access through your public firewall, and you'll need to allow access to perform this. Once again, anytime you're doing anything with cryptocurrency, I recommend not keeping any personal information on that system, including but not limited to financial information as well as identity. That being said, I'm not setting a great example with my Steam account on here. However, I do not keep any financial information attached to my Steam account. We can go over that in another video if you're interested, but this is the system I pretty much use for all of our, I guess, examples and tutorials. So once logged in, you will see that you will have a status of the node syncing. Before you can start farming, the actual node needs to be completely synced. That being said, you can start plotting, and you can even plot offline and move those plots to an online machine. So if you have a dedicated plotter, in a lot of cases, if you're just wanting to get to plotting as quickly as possible, you can disconnect the internet and just start plotting and not utilize any additional resources to sync the blockchain. So the next thing that you want to do is come down to plots, and this is where you can add plots. If you currently have a plot directory, you can also add a plot directory. We can cover this in another video. You also have the farm tab, and this is where you would basically be able to see any plots that you're currently farming with. So the next thing is going to be adding a plot. So we're just going to click add a plot. The current most popular plot size is K32. To my knowledge, K25 will be deprecated at some point, and then your K25 plots will no longer function. I do not know what the timing on, of course, sizing, etc. is going to be as we get more information and as it goes to mainnet. We will cover that in later videos. But for now, we're going to use the most common size, which is K32. As you can see here, the temporary space required is going to be 239 gigabytes. On step 2, you can choose the number of plots, and that will just be determined by the size of your drive. So if we open up our drive and go to this PC, we can see that we only have like 31 gigabytes on our C drive and then 438 gigabytes on our E drive. So if we just wanted to get the plots going as quickly as possible, we would essentially just choose whatever size we could fit on here, which at this current time being, we can only really do one, so we'll do one for the example. Now, when we get into using the plotter and that workflow, that will be later, but once again, this is just the basics. So you'll select your plot count, and then you can plot in parallel or add to plot queue. This will be determined by your system resources. You can always go into Cortana and search for system information and find out how much physical memory you have, as well as which CPU you have and how many cores you might have, right? So we have 8 cores with 16 logical processors, and then we have 32 gigs of memory. So that comes in when we hit this show advanced options. For Intel CPUs, the number of threads appears to need to be physical to function properly or the best. Now this ranges between 2 and 4 threads depending on how many plots you're trying to do. Plotting in parallel means that you would basically be doing multiple plots at the same time, while adding to queue would put them in order, right? So sequential. You would do one plot. When that's finished, you would start farming on that plot and then start plotting the next plot. For us today, we will be doing add to queue, and we will cover plotting in parallel in another video. That being said, your RAM usage will obviously matter here. The most memory that you want to use on a single system will be determined by whether or not you can use bit field plotting. Bit field plotting, basically all you really need to know about it is that you need a CPU that supports AVX. Pretty much all modern CPUs support AVX. If you are plotting in an older machine though, it will be slower to use bit field plotting. If you are using bit field plotting and you don't check this to disable it, the max amount of memory that you can use is 6750. So that is, 6,750 megabytes. And if you have 16 gigabytes and a bunch of cores, then you can use as much of that as you possibly can to plot in parallel, right? But going over the memory usage or the max that is recommended for bit field plotting in this case would essentially reduce your performance. So 6750 and adding to Q is going to be plenty. Now for AMD CPUs, modern ones at least, the Ryzen 3000 series and 5000 series with SMT does seem to function best at like 8 threads. However, if you go down to 4 and 2 threads, 4 doesn't appear to have much performance gain over 2 threads, even on AMD. On Intel, the max that I would recommend is 4 per plot. So it just will also depend on the amount of memory as well as the amount of cores you have on the system. So for example, on this 11900K, we would have 8 physical cores. And so if I wanted to plot in parallel with this particular system, we could potentially do with 32 gigabytes and 8 cores, we could potentially do, 2 plots in parallel, which we would change this count up here and then hit the plot in parallel. But for our example, because we don't have that much space left, we are just going to do 1. And then as far as threads, we are going to do 4. And then your number of buckets you can leave alone, and then your queue name you can change if you prefer. The next step is going to be selecting your temporary directory. You can click the browse button. For us, we are going to go down to our external drive here, right click, say new folder, and name it plots temp, and then select that folder. For our final directory, we are going to go to the same folder. We're going to right click and say new and folder and just name it plots and select folder. At this point, we can create the plot and it will start plotting. Now I do have a system that is currently farming that we will go over here with you guys now. Okay, so we are logged in through VMware right now. We can go over this setup for you guys at a later date. But if we basically take a look here, you can see that we are still plotting some. We have them all queued in on our VM. And then we have a bunch that are farming. Currently, I believe we have, it looks like 1.8 terabytes that we are utilizing. And if you go down to the farming, you can see your total plot size and the network space size, and then the expected time to win is currently a month with 1.8 terabytes. That will go up as we plot more and more and more and more. So it's pretty simple. Once the plot has basically completed, it will automatically start farming. That being said, later in the week, we will be covering moving plots to other systems, because currently we are plotting with a dedicated plotting machine, and then we are copying the plots over to our plots drive here. And then once it's in here, basically we come back and we go to our plots and we click refresh plots, and it will find the plots. You can plot on Mac and move the plot from Mac to Windows or Linux. You can plot on Linux and move that plot from Linux to Windows or Mac. It really doesn't matter. The plot file will be the same. The only thing that you want to make sure is that the plot size is correct before moving it. And then you will also want a pretty beefy network setup to get it moved over as quickly as possible. So there's the basics for creating a plot and starting to farm Chia. We will have more complicated and in-depth guides covering hardware, network setup, etc. here coming up in the near future. I am currently waiting on some 10 gigabyte network cards for the servers. We'll be covering the server build out tomorrow, as we are building a second server tomorrow, basically for shared storage, and then we'll cover additional stuff in the future. I am currently using VMware with the free license to manage the farming and as well as the storage, just because it's simpler that way. And we will be talking about creating, of course, additional storage arrays outside of this and some of the maybe more retail investor options for shared storage, maybe something like Synologies and so on. If you guys have any access to any hardware that could be beneficial here and you guys have some ideas, let me know. There's definitely a lot of ways to cut this cookie. It makes it way more fun for me because there's a lot of different moving parts here, including the plotter, how you want to build that out, your networking, your storage, and all of that sort of management. But if you guys just needed a quick how-to to get farming on, your local system, here it is. You can delete the plots at any time or move them anywhere else that you would prefer to move them to and reclaim that hard drive space. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I will see you next Tuesday. If you enjoyed this content, you can check out more crypto content on this playlist up here, or of course, go ahead and subscribe for more in the future. Adios.